It's probably been a 1.5 years since the Russian invasion of Ukraine. It's been 16 months since Volodymyr Zelensky became one of the main protagonists in the international news. The Ukrainian president is now really a symbol of Ukraine's resistance to the Russian invasion. Zelensky has spent 16 months actively and passively asking for help. If you see, one of the key reasons for Ukraine's admirable resilience has been the continued supply of military equipment from the West. Well, in May Ukraine moved for one of the last of its major demands.
I welcome the historic decision of the United States and POTUS to support an international fighter jet coalition. This will greatly enhance our army in the sky. I count on discussing the practical implementation of this decision at the G7 summit in Hiroshima.
Ukraine has been asking for them since the beginning of the invasion, because being of Soviet heritage, Ukraine's air force is very limited. It also comprises a very small number of aircraft. So far the Western contribution has been limited to some 30 MiG-29s from Poland and Slovakia. Significant but totally insufficient in Ukraine's view. Zelensky has always insisted that they need the US-made F-16s. But Biden showed reluctance several times in supplying them. However, now something has suddenly changed. At the end of May in Hiroshima at the G7 summit, the US president finally gave good news to the Ukrainian president.
The United States continues to do all we can to strengthen Ukraine's ability to defend itself, including launching some new joint efforts with our partners to train Ukrainian pilots on fourth-generation fighter aircraft like the F-16.
Until now, the West considered that Ukraine did not need fighter jets to defend itself against Russia. But now, they have changed their minds. Hold on, but obviously the F-16s are not going to arrive overnight. There are still a few questions to be answered. Issues that will take at least a few months to resolve. So the question is, how has Ukraine's air force performed so far? What change might it make to the course of the war if Ukraine has a fighter jet like the F-16? Where are the F-16s destined for the Ukrainian Air Force going to come from? Before answering all these questions, let's look at a bit of history. In the first phase of the Ukrainian war. At the beginning, Russia quickly pounced on Ukraine in order to put an end to Zelensky's government and failed to do so. It was more successful in the south and east of Ukraine, where its troops did make significant advances. The Russian Air Force dedicated itself to bombing the main Ukrainian defenses against air attacks, such as radars and some airfields. Fortunately for Ukraine, US intelligence did its job well and informed them hours in advance of the Russian attacks. This allowed Ukraine to disperse its equipment to minimize damage. It was a decisive move as it was able to save planes, helicopters, and armed drones from initial attacks of the invasion that were then used to attack the Russian columns advancing confidently towards Ukraine. The long-awaited superiority of the Russian armed forces did not materialize on the ground, nor did it arrive by air, because entering the Ukrainian skies entails many additional risks for the Russians. And that is because air defense was key to the Soviet armed forces. This means that both Russia and Ukraine inherited large, strong and effective air defense systems. In fact, Ukraine has the second highest density of such systems in all of Europe, probably second only to Russia. To this must be added manpads, man-portable air defense systems, such as Igla and Stinger, which Ukraine have to manage to maintain in large numbers. All this caused more than significant losses for the Russian Air Force and basically rendered Putin's army unable to take full control of the airspace. In the beginning of the invasion, Russia failed to take out Ukraine's air defense. That was a major blow to their plans. Subsequently, between April and August 2022, the Russians focused its offensive on the Donbass region. And then the third phase of the war began with the Ukrainian counteroffensive in the summer of 2022. Ukrainian troops made significant advances until November with the support of its air force. The air force that Russia has failed to destroy. This meant that skirmishes between aircraft from both sides resumed. For its part, Russia increased its missile attacks on Ukraine. Nevertheless, up until the current Ukrainian counteroffensive, the war was at a complete stalemate between December and June. During the fourth phase, Russia has continued to gamble on depleting Ukraine's anti-aircraft resources with its missiles and drones. Exhausting the SAMs, surface-to-air missiles. Ukraine had a veritable arsenal of Soviet-era SAMs that has been diminishing over the course of the war. And even if Western-supplied air defense systems arrive, it will take time to integrate them with the rest of Ukraine's equipment. For months, Zelensky has been demanding from the West the best of their inventories, Abrams tanks and Patriot missiles, one of the most sophisticated anti-aircraft defense systems in the world. He was unsuccessful for a while, but surely, if flying over Ukraine were less dangerous, Russia could achieve air superiority. Then virtually all chances of Ukraine recapturing its territory would vanish.
US to send Patriot missile systems and tanks to Ukraine faster than originally planned.
Well, after the Abrams, Leopards, and Patriots were obtained, Zelensky took up another of his big requests, the F-16 fighters. We know now Biden has given a green signal for the training of Ukrainian pilots to begin for this type of aircraft. Even so, it was not so long ago that Biden himself denied that Ukraine needed F-16s.
President Zelensky continues to say what he really needs are F-16s. Will you send F-16s?
Look, we're sending him what our seasoned military thinks he needs now.
You don't think he needs F-16s now?
No, he doesn't need F-16s now.
Is that a never?
Look, first of all, the idea that we know exactly what's going to be needed a year, 2, 3 from now, but there is no basis upon which there is a rationale, according to our military now, to provide F-16s.
But you're not ruling it out.
I am ruling it out for now.
But if the war in Ukraine has been stalled for so many months, what the hell has happened for the White House to change its mind in just 3 months? Well, at the beginning of April, information was leaked from the Pentagon indicating that the balance in the Ukrainian skies was about to break in favor of Russia.
Ukraine may run out of air defenses by May, leaked Pentagon documents warn.
Since news of this kind began to circulate, opinions in the West were suddenly divided on what to do about it. Some may argue that Ukraine may need more Patriots or NASAM-style air defenses that the US and other countries were already supplying. But there has been a growing number of those who believe there is an urgent need to provide Ukraine with fighter aircrafts. And the question is, what exactly could the arrival of F-16s in Ukraine mean? Ukraine has not yet run out of air defenses thanks to the West. But the Russian pressure continues, so if the SAMs, surface-to-air missiles, run out, Russian planes would have free rein to bomb Ukraine. And even if these weapons become scarce, Zelensky's government would have to choose between protecting cities, infrastructure, military bases, or troops deployed on the front lines. In theory, fighter jets could replace ground-based air defenses to shoot down enemy aircraft, drones, and cruise missiles. That is what Ukraine has been doing so far with its aircraft. However, all indications are that 16 months of conflict are beginning to take their toll on Ukraine, according to data provided by U.S. General James Hecker.
Ukraine has lost 60 aircraft, taken down 70 in Russian invasion, Hecker says.
Some of you might think, it doesn't seem that so many planes were lost and it has shot down a lot more. Of course, the problem is that those 60 lost fighter jets equate to no less than 40% of Ukraine's pre-war air force. Ukraine has only about 80 aircrafts left compared to the nearly 500 that Russia has allocated to this conflict. Not just that, in addition to overwhelming numerical superiority, Russian aircraft also have better radars and munitions with long ranges. Since they have failed to destroy Ukraine's air defenses, Russian aircraft are forced to fire missiles or drop bombs from a considerable distance, which greatly reduces their effectiveness. But the Russians also use armed drones.
Iranian-made drones cost as little as $20,000 to make up to $500,000 to shoot down, a growing concern in Ukraine, report says.
If you take Patriots, launching just one of these missiles can cost up to $4 million, launching 40 Patriots can cost up to $160 million. Now that is crazy. As you may guess, there is no economy that can withstand this rate of spending. So, maybe this option of using fighters to neutralize airstrikes seems quite reasonable. The problem with the Ukrainian Air Force is that their radars have become obsolete. Ukrainians have Soviet-era MiG-29s and Su-27s. Maybe, when the time comes, these jets might not have the capacity to handle the Russian Air Force. Ukraine needs a new fleet of fighter jets. This is where the F-16s come to the light. This fighter could be called literally as the backbone of NATO's air forces for the past 40 years. Its arrival would complement Ukraine's anti-aircraft defenses as it would bring them mobility. It can protect targets by moving quickly over an area. In addition, due to curvature of Earth, aircraft radars can see flying objects at longer distances than ground-based radars. Added to this the fact that F-16 radars have greater capacity than those of MiG-29 fighters. Training Ukrainian pilots for the F-16 will be no problem. Ukraine has more pilots than aircrafts. So Ukraine has made a list of 50 pilots who are available to start training with the F-16. In this way, these pilots could be ready in a few months and be operational before the end of year. The F-16 is a very capable modern fighter jet, capable of multi-role missions, in other words offering air-to-air shooting down other aircraft but also dropping bombs in an air-to-ground mode. It's been around since 1979. But there is a problem. The F-16s need smoother and longer runways.
Russia launches group missile strike on targets at Ukraine's military airfields.
An alternative would be to use scattered and improvised airfields. These could be more numerous and harder for the Russians to find. But naturally, the runways would be shorter and rougher, which means much more dangerous. So it is true that Ukraine right now has a problem with runways. A factor that reinforces the argument of those who claim that what Ukraine needs is more artillery, armor, and SAMs rather than fighter jets. Some also fear that providing the F-16 to Ukraine could lead to an escalation of the conflict. This has been ruled out by Biden himself, who assumes that the F-16 will only serve to defend Ukraine, not to attack Russia.
I have a flat assurance from Zelensky that they will not use it to go on and move into Russian geographic territory. But wherever Russian troops are within Ukraine and the area, they would be able to do that.
The White House has been very clever. By using the G7 summit to make these announcements, Biden tied his allies to this decision. And this is where the international coalition of fighter jets comes in.
The coalition of fighter jets. The meeting with the leaders of European countries. We discussed issues related to the start of training of Ukrainian pilots on F-16 and other types of aircraft. We agreed to continue working on an official decision to create the Ukrainian Sky Shield coalition of combat aircraft.
But, providing F-16s is going to represent a major new economic challenge for the Allies. Here are some estimates offered by Colin Kahl, U.S. Undersecretary of Defense Policy.
Estimates that over the long term, Ukraine would probably need 50 to 80 F-16s to replace their existing Air Force. If you did that with new F-16s, so say Block 70, 72s, that would cost $10 or $11 billion. If you did it with older Block 30 or 32 aircraft, and let's imagine you only did half, 36 of those, it would still cost $2 to $3 billion.
Then there are also other EU countries that will be key to the Sky Shield. For example, all indications are that F-16 maintenance could initially be carried out in Poland and Romania, countries bordering Ukraine that already use this type of fighter. Romania has even gained special prominence in recent weeks.
West eyes Romania as possible F-16 training site for Ukrainian pilots.
You should not forget the fact that both Poland and Romania are NATO member countries. The fact that the training and above all the maintenance is going to be carried out on their territory means that, in theory, they will remain far from the range of Russian missiles. Something that will surely not please Russia. Besides, there are quite a few months left before we will see F-16s in Ukraine. But sending the fighter jets to Ukraine sends Russia a serious message about the West's long-term commitment to Ukraine's defense.